Hey guys, Mr. Fabio here. So your class has a little bit of a different assignment from the past video that I just posted for today. The rest of your assignment is the same, but I just wanted to help you get through that with a video. I will be reading the article out loud and we'll be highlighting. So it says, read and highlight details of each event that helped start the Civil War. Once completed, define each event in your own words at the bottom of the text. So that's what we're going to be working on. I'll do the highlighting with you, and please note that the events are highlighted in blue. So that is what you're defining at the end. So I'll be reading this out loud with you. Decades of Division. And it's a timeline. So from 1619 to 1865, the Peculiar Institution. Slavery in North America, alongside the Spanish and English colonists of the 17th and 18th centuries, with an estimated 645,000 Africans imported during the more than 250 years of the institution, was legal. But slavery never existed without controversy. The British colony of Georgia actually banned slavery from 1735 to 1750, although it remained legal in the 12 other colonies. After the American Revolution, northern states, one by one, passed laws ending slavery. And the divide began to open as the South became increasingly committed to slavery. Once called a necessary evil by Thomas Jefferson, proponents of slavery increasingly switched their rhetoric, or their ways of thinking, to one that described slavery as a Christian institution that benefited all parties involved: slaves, slave owners, and non-slaveholding whites. So maybe here we would highlight that slavery never existed without controversy, and that, people banned slavery, which this is all the roots of the Civil War, because the Civil War ultimately starts to states' rights to own slaves. And then after the Revolutionary War, this divide happens. But then we also have this belief that it's a Christian institution that's going to help people. It's a lot to highlight, but it's pretty, this is a pretty beefy paragraph. We're not going to highlight that much in the next piece. So the next event is from 1831. It's called Nat Turner's Rebellion. We learned about this in class, but let's do a little reading. So it starts, in August of 1831, a slave named Nat Turner incited an uprising that spread throughout several plantations in southern Virginia. Nat Turner and approximately 70 cohorts killed around 60 white people. The deployment of militia, infantry, and artillery suppressed the rebellion after 2 days of terror. 55 slaves, including Turner, were tried and executed for their role in this insurrection. Nearly 200 more were lynched by frenzied mobs. Although small-scale slave uprisings were fairly common in the American South, Nat Turner's rebellion was the bloodiest. Virginia lawmakers reacted to the crisis by rolling back what few civil rights slaves and free black people possessed at the time. Education was prohibited, and the right to assemble was severely limited. So we have maybe Turner and approximately 70 cohorts killed 60 white people, right? So we have the uprising, and then the big outcome of it is this last part, which we learned about in class. And I'll just continue reading. I'm not going to continue highlighting. I think that the rest you can do on your own. Some of the language is really difficult. Please use Google Dictionary or use your context clues to try to get through it. But I'll continue to read. So we have the Wilmot Proviso, was a law proposed by David Wilmot at the close of the Mexican-American War. If passed, the Proviso would have outlawed slavery in most of the Southwest all the way to California. Wilmot spent 2 years fighting for his plan. So this is a plan. All attempts failed. Nevertheless, the intensity of the debate surrounding the law prompted the first serious discussions of separation from the United States. Then we have the Compromise of 1850. The Compromise allowed California as a free state and did not control slavery in the remainder of the new Southwest lands. Also, the government supported the Fugitive Slave Act, a law which compelled Northerners to seize and return escaped slaves to the South. While the agreement succeeded in limiting fighting between the North and the South, it did little to stop the issues that divided the United States. The new Fugitive Slave Act, by forcing non-slaveholders to participate in the institution, also led to the Americans becoming angry. And we have Uncle Tom's Cabin in 1852, which is a book by Harriet Beecher Stowe from Connecticut, which is pretty cool. So we have Harriet Beecher Stowe's story of a slave life was a cultural sensation. Northerners felt as if their eyes had been opened to the horrors of slavery, while Southerners protested the Stowe's work as slanderous. Uncle Tom's Cabin was the second best-selling book in America in the 19th century, second only to the Bible. Its popularity brought the issue of slavery to life for those few who remained unmoved. Then we have 2 more. We have Dred Scott v. Sandford's case in 1857. So we have Dred Scott was a Virginia slave who tried to sue for his freedom in court. The case eventually rose to the level of the Supreme Court, where the judges found that, as a slave, Dred Scott was a piece of property that had none of the legal rights or recognitions afforded to being a human being. The Dred Scott decision threatened to entirely change the politics of America. The classification of slaves as mere property made the federal government's authority to control slavery much more unclear. And then we have the last one, 1859, John Brown's Raid. Abolitionist John Brown supported violent action against the South to end slavery and played a major role in starting the Civil War. After Potawatomi Massacre during Bleeding Kansas, Brown returned to the North and plotted a far more threatening act. In October 1859, he and his supporters led a raid on the weapons factory in Virginia in order to capture and take weapons located there, distribute them among local slaves, and began an armed insurrection. A small force of U.S. Marines put down the uprising. So now you're going to take John Brown's Raid, Dred Scott case, Uncle Tom's Cabin, Compromise of 1850, and the Wilmot Proviso, and you're going to define those terms. You don't have to do the ones I did up here because I did them with you, but you can do the ones that I didn't do. Okay, good luck.